Hi, I'm Mark Paola, and I'm going to be discussing my Assessment 2 presentation for the world of maths. So the importance of maths can never be emphasised enough. Maths is everywhere. Obviously it's on our TVs, phones, fridges, washing machines, cars, computers, it's everywhere. It's our job as educators to teach and to give our students the best possible math education to help to prepare them for life in general. This can sometimes mean that maths is not the most enjoyable subject to learn. And I can attest from that, from primary school and high school as well, being given a book of maths problems or times tables to learn. They give you one a week, go home and learn it, come back and say it in front of the class the next. Or given equations where you're sitting in a classroom in year 9 and you're thinking, well, what's algebra got to do with me just wanting to play music? So our job's to try to make it a bit more enjoyable for the students. So my subject for this is nature, and how we can incorporate that into maths learning. So I've actually chosen meteorology, which I think is a bit of a fun thing to do. So basically what I've planned is, for a summary, is that students take weather readings using simple weather instruments and predict the weather. They'll take readings for a month during a season, and I'll want them to chart it as well. With the information, I can then get the students to graph what is happening with each instrument each day and use the data to show patterns the storms follow for that particular season, whatever it may be. So this is just to get them to be a bit more interactive. It's a lot more hands-on, and it's not just sitting in front reading a book. So we want to evaluate weather predictions basically based on the data that we're gathering. So materials we're going to need are pattern blocks, a barometer, anemometer, a weather vane, a thermometer, a rain gauge, ruler. Obviously we're going to need graph paper, pencils, and a weather chart. So basically a bit of a background. Meteorologists gather information each day about the weather using their weather instruments. They have been gathering this information for decades, and just like meteorologists evolved, students could take weather readings using the simple weather instruments that I've just mentioned, and we can also predict the weather by doing that. To do this, they must take the reading for a month during a season and to chart it. With this information, they can graph what is happening with each instrument each day. As storms are coming in and out, coming and going, the written data shows certain patterns that the storms follow for that particular season. When they graph each instrument each day, they can see what happens to each instrument as a storm comes in and when it leaves. It's also fun to compare the graphs of the instruments to each other and each day. The more they do it, the more they'll see the patterns of the storms. It is recommended that, or I recommend that the students do a month instrument reading for each season so they can know the patterns for each season. So basically for instructional procedures, we want to sort of group the students in a group of 6. I want to hand out pattern blocks to each student, give them a couple of minutes for each to make something that shows, a complicated pattern. Have them make it so that the pattern is recognisable, can be added upon. It can be in any shape or design he or she desires. I want to have each student show his or her pattern to the group. Have the group discuss the patterns they see in each one to see if they can add more pattern or blocks to continue the pattern. We'll also want the class to discuss how we can know which types of blocks should be placed next to the complete pattern. Ask the class where we might see patterns each day. Ask where we might rely on patterns. Tell the class that we are going to talk about patterns of the weather, where we rely on patterns so that we can predict the weather. So number 1 month before doing that activity, I want to have the students take instrument readings of the weather each day with the barometer, thermometer, anemometer, weather vane, rain gauge, ruler, and I want them to take notice of the types of clouds in the sky. Put the students in groups of 6. I want them to pass out their groups the weather data chart that shows the recorded data telling the weather readings of weather elements, precipitation, cloud type, air temperature, wind speed, wind direction, and barometric pressure. So for part 2, I want to put the students in the same groups they were in before, have the students take out their recognising charts of different weather events worksheets, review with the students what they have done so far. They have reorganised what changes happens and each weather instrument when there is a weather change. Parts out some graph paper, assign each group a weather event that they are going to graph, assign each student one of the weather elements to graph. That could be air pressure, temperature, wind speed, wind direction, cloud type, etc. for that particular weather event. By using the weather data dates they found, they are going on the reorganising changes of different weather events worksheet. Have them graph their own weather element readings of the dates of their category. If there is more than one event in each category, make sure they graph each set of dates separately. For part 3, I want to put the students in the same groups as before. Review with them what each group has done so far. Now the students have graphed the information for each weather event that they were assigned. I want to have each student write about the pattern he or she sees for the type of weather element that they have been assigned. Have the group of students tell each other one by one what happened to each weather element for the event they graphed. They may even tell about it in a day-to-day format. Have them continue to use the instruments to find more weather data within the same season. Have them gather enough data to be able to make a prediction by graphing the data and comparing it to the data that they have already taken. Have them predict what is coming up and what the weather will be. Also, I want to make a copy of the graph the students have made and let him or her take it home. I want to have them discuss it with their family, what category they have worked with, and what their job was. I want them to have them explain to their parents what the graph actually means. The teacher can type the patterns that were found for each category, give each student and each group of pattern statements for each weather element. Have the students explain the patterns of his and her category as well. So my assessment plan for this is that in the first activity, I want to watch carefully the dates that they wrote to show a change in the weather event. The second activity, we want to look at the graphs they made to make sure that they are actually accurate. The third activity, we want to read the statements they wrote and want to tell about their patterns. So the students are getting involved. Obviously, they're going to be doing equations to work this out. They're going to be working with graphs, and it just makes it a bit more enjoyable for them. All of this is aimed later years of primary, so I am looking at grade 5 and 6s. So that is my assessment too, and thank you very much. Signing out.